Spider-Man Home Alone. Hey guys, Pigwars here, and today we're talking about why I think Chameleon should be the villain of the next MCU Spider-Man film, and my pitch for what that Spider-Man film should be. So for those of you who don't know, the Chameleon is Spider-Man's first ever supervillain. He appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 1, and ever since, he has been a recurring antagonist to the web-slinger. When I was younger, I had a comic collection of Spider-Man and Fantastic Four team-ups, and wouldn't you know, one of those comics was a rerun of Spidey's first ever appearance in comics. Not the very first, but like his first ever issue. And, well, in that comic, he fights the Chameleon. So I read it and fell in love with the Chameleon. He was a great foe for Spidey. He works because he makes Spider-Man feel unsure. Kind of like Mysterio, but instead of making fake illusions, he wears masks. Just like Spider-Man does. You never know who the Chameleon really is, but you know that he's out there, and he's watching you. And at this point in Spider-Man's story, he's all alone. No friends, no family, no nothing. Just an apartment and rent.
Rent? Not now. Listen, it's a free country. It's not rent-free country.
Leave me alone.
Give me rent.
You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
And so, I feel Chameleon would work wonders in this part of the story. Imagine Peter trying to do stuff, but he starts seeing dead people again. He sees those he once thought were dead, only for it to be the Chameleon. Or maybe he starts making new friends, only to see them do acts he could never truly imagine them doing. It would play with Peter, and now he can't trust anyone. He's truly alone. And John Watts, the director of Far From Home and all the other Spider-Man films in the MCU, and the director of the upcoming Fantastic Four film, played with the idea. The Chameleon was at one point going to be the villain of Far From Home before Mysterio was ultimately chosen. However, we still got a character with the same namesake, Dmitry Smedrikov. Also, fun fact, Chameleon is the half-brother of Kraven the Hunter, for any of you Kraven fans. Anyway, Dmitry, in Far From Home, was the guy who drove the bus and worked for Nick Fury. With this point, the story could go anywhere. We could bring back Daredevil and do a legal battle where Peter is framed again, or we can bring in the Scorpion and him and Chameleon team up. You could have Shocker make new weapons and him and Vulture help make the Chameleon super gear. The possibilities are endless. So to show this, I'm giving my pitch for Spider-Man 4, Spider-Man Home Alone. The film would open with Dmitry being fired from S.H.I.E.L.D. after being accused of stealing high-tech gear. He'd plead his case, but end up being fired anyway. And this could be a fun place to include Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. characters like Melinda May or maybe Talos from Captain Marvel. We would catch up on Peter then. He'd be doing a small community college in New York City, and he would end up meeting a girl named Deborah Whitman. Deborah would take a liking to Peter, but after Mary Jane, or MJ, Michelle Jones, I don't know why they call her that in the MCU, but okay. After she almost died, and the fact Peter still had feelings for MJ, he wanted to get close to Deborah. Meanwhile, Peter would get close to one of his professors, Professor Miles Warren, his biology teacher. They would share and bond over interest in genetics and science. This would hint towards the Jackal later down the line, and maybe a clone saga. Yes, I like the Spider-Man clone saga, sue me. When he's out of school, he spends his time as Spider-Man, stopping low-level thugs like Shocker and Scorpion, Scorpion, I think it'd be cool if he used Doc Ock's chopped-off arm, or Shocker could even try to get away in the Shocker Buggy, maybe throw in a Big Will cameo, or Silvermane as well. To pay his rent, he works as a pizza delivery boy for Joe's Pizza. This could show more of Peter's struggles. His landlord, Mr. Dickovich, would be aggressive for rent, forcing Peter to work harder and have less time to himself. As this goes on, Dmitry would use the face disguise tech seen in Winter Soldier and Black Widow, and disguise himself as different high-ranking officials in S.H.I.E.L.D. He would go around killing the people that had got him fired. And this would make for an interesting conflict. Peter, who is now all alone and doesn't have anyone, has to take down Chameleon, who is everyone. At school, Deborah would keep trying to ask Peter out. And he would constantly say he's busy or he had to take extra hours for his job. He didn't want to hurt her feelings, but he felt bad for her. Deborah was alone and he was the only person she seemed to like. Eventually, Peter caved in, agreeing to go for her house for dinner. There, Peter meets Mr. Whitman, who is a top officer of S.H.I.E.L.D., and one of the people seen at the firing of Dimitri. So yeah, I think we all see where this is going. Peter would sit down for dinner with Deborah and her dad when they hear a knock at the door. Mr. Whitman opens the door only to be shot by a man with a white face, a whole white helmet. Peter runs after the man, putting on his costume that was underneath his suit. He chases the masked man into the streets, only to find an old man. The old man tells Peter he saw the man with a white face mask go in a different direction, and Peter runs off. And after Peter leaves, the old man stands up straight, takes off his face to reveal Dimitri, aka the Chameleon. The Chameleon's power is he can look like anyone, so I want to use that to the fullest extent here. Peter attends Mr. Whitman's funeral and vows to find the Chameleon. Peter gets out every night looking, but he finds nothing. The police scanners also show nothing. Meanwhile, Dimitri looks into Spider-Man and investigates his powers and abilities. He looks at footage S.H.I.E.L.D. had taken in Far From Home, and he constructs his own web shooters and wall climbers. We would look back at Peter, and he'd be taking class with Mr. Warren. The two would be discussing genetic mutations. Eventually, Peter would go back to work, only to find out he's been replaced with another driver. You see, we need to show that Peter's struggling. He can't keep up his job and do Spider-Man work. Whenever he gets close to someone, they get hurt. Peter would be hopeless. He can't even stop one thug. What chance did he have to ever be a real superhero now? He would visit May's grave and lay flowers next to it. He'd also lay flowers at Ben's grave, which is next to hers. Hell, maybe even his parents' graves. All 4 of his dead family members. Boy, don't you just love Peter Parker's family? They're all dead. He would tell his family how he feels and why he misses them, but he doesn't know what to do. He can't stop this thug, and he feels all alone. But the words of May would echo through him, pushing him to continue on. With great power, there must also come great responsibility. Peter would put back on his mask and look for the Chameleon. Peter goes home listening to police scanners, only to hear of a masked figure robbing a nearby bank. He swings over to the bank, only to find a man in a Spider-Man suit. The imposter Spider-Man is robbing the bank, and using fake web shooters and fake wall climbers. Of course, the audience, us, knows it's Chameleon, but Peter doesn't know it. Peter tries to talk the Chameleon down, but the two end up in a brawl. Luckily for Peter, he has super strength, and Chameleon, he has a mask. It's not really much of a fight. If anything, Peter punches him once. And Peter subdues the Chameleon and hands him over to the authorities. We would end the film with Peter and Deborah talking, and he'd tell her that he can't date her. She would be upset, but ultimately understand. Peter would leave, and a cut to him doing a classic final swing around the city with his red and blue suit seen at the end of Far From Home, shining in the sky. And that's my pitch for Spider-Man 4, Home Alone. But wait, am I forgetting something? The end credits. We would see the Venom symbiote crawling around, and it would crawl next to Peter, who's laying in bed, before it goes back to black. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of putting Venom in the MCU without Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock, but hey, maybe it could be interesting. So yeah, my Spider-Man 4. I put a lot of hard work into this, and I hope you guys like it. Thank you all so much for watching, have a nice day, hope you like, subscribe, and bye!